Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, so my name is Patty Kelly. I'm the chair of the ZBA, and I'm going to do a roll call vote. Henry Rua? Are you here, Henry?
Here. Yeah.
Okay. Joe Mayone?
Yes.
Tim Scott?
Here.
Randy Ricks?
Here.
Holly Straight?
Here.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask Holly to join the board for the DeSimone and the Tarpon Towers applications tonight. And then Randy Ricks will, who is a board member, will participate in the application questioning the building department's letter. That's the second thing on the agenda. So we are now having a public hearing. I just want to ask Kevin, have you received all of the cards back? Have you received any letters or emails or phone calls from anybody from the public? And there is nobody from the public here. Is there anybody here who is interested in speaking to this application? This is the application at 759 Kings Highway and 763 Kings Highway. Both properties are located in the moderate density residential districts and are non-conforming in size, being less than 1 acre required in the zoning district. Applicants are requesting variances for lot line revisions and a 19-foot variance to the required 25-yard setback. There are no public participation. I'm going to ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Tim, could you make a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion to close.
Holly,
I'll
will you
second it, Joe.
Oh, Joe will second. All right. Let's do a roll call vote to close the meeting. Henry,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Holly. Holly says yes, she's here. Joe,
Yes.
and that's it. All right, so having said that, is there anybody who would like to make a motion on the appeal?
I would like to make a motion.
Okay, is there a second? Tim?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. Holly, would you read the motion? Yeah. Kevin, we're getting a lot of echo from your computer. Go ahead.
Should I? Okay. In the matter,
If you're not speaking, if you could mute yourself, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
okay, can you hear me? In the matter of the application, submitted by Thomas and Jeanette DeSimone pertaining to 759 Kings Highway, Parcel 1, and 763 Kings Highway, Parcel 2, I move to approve the variance for a lot line revision along the driveway that infringes on Parcel 2 and the 19-foot variance to the required 25-foot side yard setback on Parcel 1. The benefit cannot be achieved by any other means because the properties are pre-existing non-conforming in size, being less than 1 acre required in the moderate density residential zoning district. The plan does not introduce an undesirable change in the neighborhood character or a detriment to nearby properties. The change is not substantial. It will also not have any adverse physical or environmental effects. This difficulty was self-created when Mr. and Mrs. DeSimone divided the property so their daughter and son-in-law could build a house. These variance requests seek to bring the lot lines in compliance with the zoning code.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's do a vote on the motion. Henry?
I'm sorry, Patty. Try that again. I can't
Can
hear
you
you.
hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay, we're doing a vote on the motion unless you had something discussed about the motion.
No, I
Okay.
just, I didn't,
So this is to approve the motion. Henry,
yes,
Joe,
yes,
Tim,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. The motion is passed. So now for the Mr. and Mrs. DeSimone who are here, and Dan, we will get a copy of this motion to you tomorrow. We will also send it to the planning board and to Lisa Stanley. And what we suggest is you contact the planning board and get on their agenda. But you're on your way. Thank you very much. Thank you, Albie. Okay. Good night to everybody. Did you say something? Oh. Okay.
all right, I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay. On to, thank you. Good night. Thanks for wearing masks. Okay, on to the next order of business. This is Kinry West. Kinry West located at, well, on the application, and Mr. Moriello, you're here, you can help clarify this. On the application that the Kinnerys filled out, it said 1740 Route 212. But I think that's the other property, the one that is operating now. That's not the property that's in question, correct?
I'm not certain, Patty, what the.
Okay,
is. I
but that
think
would
we
be
have the-
important for us to know.
Yeah, I think we have the right section, block, and lot. I don't know if Gina uses the same address for both. We can ask her.
Kim, you're muted if you're trying to respond.
So, Mr. Moriello, and for the public and everybody else who's here, this is an application for an interpretation by the zoning board of the building inspector's letter about a proposed property. It has not been to the planning board. It hasn't gone beyond this. They had a meeting, a meeting about the property and about the usage, and the building inspector offered his views on how it should proceed. Mr. Moriello is challenging that and is asking us for an interpretation of two specific things in the letter. And Ms. Benson, who represents the neighbors, Mr. Cantor and Ms. Hutchison, are also challenging another section of the letter and asking for clarification. So, Mr. Moriello, how about you go first and try to be as to the point about the letter and what the board has to decide, which is actually the language used by the building inspector in that letter. If you would, the floor is yours.
Well, let me say thank you to the board for.
Can you move closer to your mic?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Thank you to the board for hearing this matter. I just, if you look, probably the best way to understand where my client's position is, we're wholly in agreement that this use is an accessory use, not on the same lot and incidental thereto to the primary use, which is a contractor's yard. So we're wholly in agreement with that part of Albie's determination. And we've never maintained anything different that we had to go back to the planning board for special use permit review and for site plan, as well as for involved agency review under seeker. This matter on this particular parcel was held in abeyance for many, many months while my client went through a site plan approval for the contractor's yard on the adjacent lot.
Can I just
So-
ask you a question, Mr. Moriello?
Sure.
You say contractor's yard. I was at the property over the weekend, and the sign outside that property calls it an excavation company. So could you just tell us specifically what is the the company do? Is it an excavation company or is it a general contractor? Because it's being called an excavation by,
Well, general contractors do excavation all the time, so
well,
I
they do a
don't,
lot of other things too, but
absolutely. So I don't know what they call themselves or
they call
that makes
themselves an
it,
excavation company. That's what
yeah,
the sign
and that,
says on their property.
yeah, in that particular sign they do. But I don't think that that's relevant to the issue at hand is where do they fit under the zoning law? And I think if the board examines my submittals from February 11th, 2020 and February 27th, 2020, as well as the most recent submittal, which is July 30th, 2021, I think it's very, very clear where they fit under the zoning law. The the arguments from the other side have tried to classify this as 4 or 5 different things, as near as I can tell. And I think the wording couldn't be any plainer or clearer under the zoning law with respect to this issue. And it's not as if the clients are trying to evade any kind of review. They're not. They have already spent many, many, many thousands of dollars going through the planning process on the first part of their project here, which was to develop, the contractor yard portion, which is zoned specifically for this use. I recognize that the appellants have made the argument that it's intrusive, but this is in a highway business zoning district. It's not in a residential district. They happen to be looking at it or in proximity to it. So from my standpoint, the submittals speak for themselves, and I think they lay out clearly the statutory language and what should be the proper interpretation, which is to agree with that interpretation that Albie made. So far,
Perhaps, Mr. Moriello, perhaps you could help us understand better if you would tell us specifically what your clients plan to do. In their application originally, it was a construction demolition processing facility. You said that was before they retained you as an attorney and that you now have there's other usages. What is he going to do with that property that would cause Alvy to write this letter?
well, I can clarify to the best of my knowledge, and then I'll let them, speak. I'll let Gina speak. But from what I understand, and in my submittals, February 11th submittal, we lay out that they would want to stockpile soil and rocks, separate rocks with a separator, screen topsoil, chip stumps and trees. Stumps are no longer part of that plan. Stumps are regulated by DEC in a different category. So I don't think that's, they can do that. I think they're allowed to do that, but the approval process is takes a different tack. They want to also process riprap on the site.
They want to
I
process
don't
what?
know process riprap, which is small stones to help with drainage. So I don't know if Gina wants to add anything to that, but that is, it's really, and again, this is, contractors do this all the time, separating rocks and screening topsoil and stockpiling, chipping trees is done as a matter of course by contractors, also done by excavators, also done by contractors who are excavators too. So I can let Gina speak if she wants.
Before she does, you also mentioned in your documents that they're going to be making mulch and selling that and making that for sale. So they're going to be producing a product as well, correct?
Yeah, I should let Gina answer that because I don't know. When we say mulch, I don't know exactly what it is. I know that they're chipping. I know that they want to chip trees, that they have a chipper where they chip trees. And if that's the byproduct is the mulch, then I'll let Gina speak to that.
Well, okay. Gina, you're muted.
Gina, you're muted. No, you're muted. You unmuted yourself, but we couldn't hear you. You're unmuted now, but you have an issue with your microphone, it would appear.
My screen's showing she's muted still.
Yeah, she's keeps unmuting and unmuting, but she's in an unmuted state, but we can't hear you. Are you using an external microphone? We can't hear you.
Mike, we can't hear your client, so I'm just going by what was in your submissions, that they were going to be creating.
Gina can call in if she has the.
Now, the other thing is, and you don't think, as you use the word processing, you do not think that the word processing is an accurate description when the building inspector said that it was going to be construction.
No, I think processing is accurate. I think it's the other people that are claiming that that's not accurate. They've alternately claimed that it was manufacturing, prefabrication of construction materials, mechanical or chemical transformation of materials or substances into new products, and most recently sanitary services. But to me, it clearly fits in processing.
Well, if it's processing, Mr. Moriello, as is written in the building inspector's letter, that is not allowed in the highway business district, which is why he said you would have to go to the town board for a special permit from them.
That's correct. It's not allowed.
But you were objecting to that.
Patty?
You were objecting to that in your documents.
I objected to his first interpretation because his first interpretation was not clear. And what I was worried about was that the time to appeal was going to expire, because you only have a certain amount of time to appeal. And I did not want it to stand like that. He subsequently clarified his position, and I'm not in disagreement with that at all. The processing is not, it's not that it's not allowed in the HB zone, it's that it's not allowed as of right. We have to go get a site plan approval and a special use permit, and we have no problem with doing that. None.
Right.
I have maintained, and I put this in my submittals, that the plan by the opponents of the project is to cost my client as much time and money as they can, and delay matters as much as they can, and ultimately perhaps go to court on it. And that's where it goes. That's where it goes. But I think clearly the zoning law speaks directly to our use, and where it's silent, where the zoning law is silent in its definitions, which I can point to. Hold on one second.
Well, he's looking for that. This is Gina. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
Gina.
Gina, could you do us a favor though? Could you turn off the audio on your computer if you're going to be on the phone, because we're hearing you and we're getting a little feedback there.
There you go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know if he was coming back.
Go ahead,
No,
Gina.
I'm gonna take my screen off because something's going haywire with it. So I'll just talk.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, Gina.
I just wanted to clarify at least one thing, that there are two pieces of parcels of property. There's 1740, that's already been approved, and the one that we're questioning right now is 1752.
Okay.
So that
important.
is. And we are an excavation company, and we do mostly site preparation. So there's that confusion. But depending on what laws and zonings and guidelines you're looking at, we are classified under construction. What we want to do, our original plan on 1740 was we were going to build our shop, we were going to stockpile material, store our machinery that when it's not on site, and that's what we were going to do there. On this parcel, when we first put the application in, we wanted to grind stumps, screen topsoil, stockpile material, and also use it as an extension of the construction yard for our machinery and things that couldn't fit down there. When we put that application in, our Ms. Fenson and her client said it was manufacturing, and that kind of stopped the process because then we needed to get Mr. Moriello involved, we needed a lawyer, and we needed the interpretation. That's kind of what we've been waiting for while we were dealing with all the stuff down on our first parcel, which has since been approved. So we're kind of back at square one. I did go to a planning board workshop back in, I think, April, and I was told I had to get this clarified by the zoning and the zoning board of appeals if it went that far before I could go back to the planning board. So that's where we're at. It seems like screening, it seems like grinding stumps is the issue because stumps, you need if you want to grind stumps, stumps are classified as a solid waste and you need to apply for a C&D permit.
Well,
And
soil
that's what
is
Mr.
also.
Weeks,
Soil is also.
yeah, soil is also. And it appears anything you take off of a construction site is classified as C&D. And that's true, and that's something I didn't know because when I first got it, I said to Mr. Weeks, I don't really want to apply for a C&D permit, but it appears that's what you need to do for us to do those business activities.
Right. And
so that's where we're at.
And you have no objection going to the town, which is what the town law requires. For C&D operations, you have to go to the town law, town board and get a special
And we're going to have to, we do, Mr. Weeks did put that in his letter that we would be allowed to do these things if we went to the town board and got the permit, and we also had to follow DEC rules and regulations. So there's also a DEC component of it. At this time, we don't meet the yardage to come even close to what DEC would need for us to even register, let alone get a permit. It's under 10,000 yards.
And
we're trying.
You also understand that your property is in the Gateway Overlook.
Highway. In the Gateway Overlook. Oh yeah,
and
we know that. That's why if you look at our first parcel, we switched our building around so you didn't see the overhead doors. You just see the doors and the windows. You don't see the overhead doors. We put a big extensive berm with trees. We're very mindful of the gateway because we spent a lot of time with that on our first application. And we're still mindful of that as well on our second parcel. And we're trying to, figure out a way that it works for everybody.
So when you're I'm sorry, does anybody else on the board have any questions? I don't want to monopolize this. Henry, do you have any questions about this right now? Joe?
You're following right along our train.
Anybody else? Tim or Holly?
I just had one question because I missed something that that you said a second ago. When you listed the activities, you listed stockpiling materials, stump grinding, and screening. Did you say screening topsoil? What are you screening?
Yeah, you screen dirt because if you have a pile of dirt, it's like they classify that like as fill. But if you screen it and take out, maybe chunks of clay, rocks, roots, it becomes screened topsoil. And some people like it. They finish off their lawns, they put it around their pools, their swing sets.
Okay.
It looks a little nicer and it's a little safer for children. There's no rocks or roots coming up from it. And it's just another use of the product.
Thank you.
So Gina, what I'm getting from you is that you do not object to the building inspector telling you that you have to go to the town for a special use permit from the town board, and that you would have to file for DEC for a permit as well. You have no objection.
Right. I did understand that. My question and why I wanted the interpretation and really some clarification. I mean, we went through a lot at our first parcel, so I just want to be transparent here, and I want to know what I can do, what I need to do, and if moving forward, if the stump grinding is causing the most, question is what's questionable.
Well, it's not just the stump grinding. It's soil is also included in that as any part of construction and demolition debris.
Right.
So if you're going to be doing processing, you are going to need the permit, obviously.
Right.
And you're going to need the approval of the town board.
Right. Okay.
for something
Yeah,
like this.
originally I thought maybe my neighbors, they were just mostly had a problem with the grinder because that's what they continue to have objection to. And I said, well, if this is, if it, in the interest of moving forward with time and money and people's sanity, I would forget about the grinding because the grinder is portable. Whenever possible, it's on site somewhere. But the screening of the dirt we would definitely want to do because it's just another use of the product. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at these huge stockpiles of dirt.
Well, you also know that your neighbors are not, they are behind you. They are behind this property.
Yes.
They are very close
Right.
to the property. And so they are impacted. And so their concerns, rightfully, as you mentioned, should be taken into
Right.
consideration because
Oh,
they have to go through
definitely,
this
and we
as well.
try to be mindful. I mean,
Right.
we would try to, if we even get approved, we would try to situate things where it was protecting from the gateway and also keeping it as far away from our neighbors, as we can. Unfortunately, with all the modifications we had to do on lot number 1, to accommodate all the issues that were brought up, it's a pretty looking excavation site, but it's not very practical. We ran out of room. We had, just between the berm, and we agreed not to hammer any more rock out. So we're really trying to appease everybody, but keep in mind we are trying to run a business, But we certainly will do whatever the
this
town.
solves a big problem. This solves a problem. One of the problems was the language of the building inspector's letter. And you agree
Right.
that there's nothing wrong with that particular portion of the building inspector's letter where he tells you that you're going to have to go to both the town and get a permit from
Yeah.
DEC. You're cool with that.
I did. At first, when I did hear that it was going to be a C&D permit, I have to tell you, I did shudder a bit because when you hear C&D, you don't think of dirt and you don't think of stumps. You think of buildings, you think of garbage, you think of debris, and that's
Right.
certainly not what this is. In fact, in the DEC regulations, they separate construction and demolition debris and land clearing debris, which is mostly
Yes.
organic material. So, in part that was me reacting to the C&D because we're constantly being compared to the gentleman down the road who had all kinds of issues,
Right.
and he had a C&D permit. So I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been fighting all along to put some distance and difference between us and that man, and now we're right back in the same category.
Well, but
I
the
said,
category
they're going to have a
is
field day with this.
it was not the category. It was his abuse of the category. So
I know, but we tried to
whole
all
different-
along say, yeah, I know, but unfortunately, we're constantly being compared to him. And I noticed in Miss Spencer's submittals, she has all of his stuff in there, which, this is exactly what I didn't want.
Well, I think I didn't read it quite that way. I read it as simply showing the various things that are included in construction and demolition debris, and also in mulch. Since the letter from your attorney says that you're going to be making mulch and then selling that as a product. And so that's why I asked if you're going to be doing that, because that in itself is also processing.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's just the wording that's, and that's, I think we're all getting an education on the wording and the different things that mean different things to different people,
Right. Okay.
But anyway, in order for us to do anything of the activities we wanted to do, it appears that we do have to file for this C&D permit.
Okay.
Originally,
so
I
I'll
thought
let
they were
Albie
just
know that portion of when we finish, we'll do a report. But so on those two items, you are in agreement with.
Right. But I just want to
and her-
clarify, I need the C&D permit even to screen dirt?
I haven't got the regs right in front of me right now, but yes, with dirt is considered a product of land clearing, and so whatever.
Well, that's what I would want that's what I would really need further clarification on, because if I can screen dirt without doing the whole C&D thing, I would get grinding off the
but you're
table.
doing more than clearing dirt. You've got rocks, you've got other things that are going to be in there, you said.
Right,
So,
but it appears that I have no choice but to file for this C&D permit and go to the town.
okay. Now, the other thing, and Mr. Moriello, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Okay. The other thing that I want to ask you about is that portion about accessory use on another property. I'm well acquainted with the code, the portion of the zoning law that talks about accessory use. on a property, on a single property, could you point me to the portion of the zoning law that talks about accessory use for another property on another property?
Yeah, there's a section, and I don't want to say that it's unusual because I've seen it in other zoning laws, but there is a section of the
In our
law that
zoning law? Is it in
No.
our zoning law?
I've seen it in other zoning laws. The
What about our
provision that-
zoning law?
Yeah, it's in your zoning law. It reads that, and Albie references it. The
Right.
Zoning law schedule of use regulations categorize accessory uses, and they have accessory building, which is defined. They have accessory use, which is defined. Then they have accessory use customarily incident to any of the uses listed herein and not on the same lot. And the not is in capitals too, and underlined, I believe.
It
It-
would be very helpful for the board, if you could find that section of the zoning law. I was looking for it. I couldn't find it.
It's 24556. It's in my submittal. It's in a quote in the submittal from February 27th, 2020, that's appended to my documents.
Okay, thank you.
And-
Thank you.
And it is, we should also say too, that there is no definition for accessory use not on the same lot. It's referenced as being allowed, but there's no definition for it. So as the board knows, when you don't have a definition under the zoning law, you go to its normal and customary definition under the dictionary. And it's common definition. And that I do it in my submittal from the 27th. There's a whole legal analysis with the case law cited in there about plain meaning and about wording that's omitted from the zoning law. And if it's ambiguous, it has to be resolved in favor of the property owner. So there is an analysis of all of that in my submittal.
Okay. Thank you.
We
So
also
unless-
just as, this is Jean again, this is just an aside, when we were at our planning board workshop, we spent some time talking about accessory use too, so I know it was brought up there as well.
Okay. If you don't have anything else at the moment, I'd like to ask Ms. Svensson to address her concerns, and on behalf of Ms. Hutchison and Mr. Cantor, who, as I mentioned before, live on Adams Road, which is a residential area right behind your property. So Ms. Svensson, if you're on, by all
Thanks.
means, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you might want to be a little closer to your mic.
How about that?
Good.
All right. Thanks so much, Chairwoman Kelly and members of the board. Yeah, as you said, I represent Mark Cantor and Heather Hutchison, who live at 24 Adams Road. They have lived there for 25 years. They work from home, as well as living in their home, and they've been part of the community for 25 years. Their home is on a ledge that overlooks the applicant's property. And, you know, we just want to emphasize all that Mark and Heather are looking for here is for the town to enforce its zoning. They've actually had to get involved much more than they ever wanted to, because when the applicant first started working on the site, they set up the rock screening and the stump grinding without any permission. It was not part of their approval. And so, you know, my clients were forced to get involved to have the town enforce the law. The town, the building inspector did agree with us. This was back in 2019, and he put a stop work order on both sites. The applicant did go ahead and get a modified site plan approval for the site at 1740 Route 212. But they said that they would not, they actually planned to go forward with an application for 1752 Route 212, and then withdrew that application and said they wouldn't use the site until it was all squared away with the town. Unfortunately, they are using the site. They have piles of material on there. So the upshot is that my clients know what the stump grinder and the rock screener sound like. They haven't used them lately, but they were using them back in 2019. And so we know exactly the noise and the dust and everything that's generated from that equipment. And that's why when we saw this determination by the building inspector, you know, we also did not want to let 60 days go by without bringing this to the ZBA to get it straightened out. So that's why we're here tonight. So specifically the portion of the June 8th the June 8th letter that we are objecting to is the part that says that this debris processing facility can be allowed as an accessory use. That's what we're asking the ZBA to examine. Incidentally, I'm confused about the last conversation because you were talking about it being an accessory use not on the same lot, but the June 8th letter specifically says it would be an accessory use on the same lot. So I'm not sure why we're having that discussion.
I think that was clarified in a subsequent letter.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything different about that though, as far as I have seen.
Which subsequent letter are you talking about, Mike?
Yeah.
Alvy's got a letter July 15th, 2021.
Is it in your package?
Yeah, yes, I believe, I think it's in my package. I'm not certain, but he has a letter that says that it is an accessory use, which would require approval from the town of Saugerties after site plan review. It doesn't say special use permit, but it does require a special use permit.
Okay, but that's all it says in the June 8th letter is it says accessory use on the same lot, and there's nothing different stated in the July 15th letter. So I think that's the determination, that it's on the same lot.
Go ahead, Emily, go ahead.
All right, well, we can set that aside, but our main concern is that this is just simply not an accessory use. If you look at the two sites, there's already a complete approved contractor shop on the 1740 site. It's got a shop, it's got parking area, it's got material storage areas. It's a complete facility. So there isn't right now, as far as I've seen, if there is, we'd love to see it, but I don't think right now that there's a separate site plan proposed for the 1752 site. So I'm working off of the one that was proposed around, I think it was around January of 2020. It shows a completely separate site. It's got a separate entrance off of Route 212. It's got areas for stumps, rock, both the unprocessed and then the processed material, and all of the grinders and screener machinery. So in order for something to be an accessory use, it has to be both customarily incidental and it has to be subordinate to the main use. So this debris processing facility, it's not customarily incidental to a contractor shop. In one of our submittals, we sent pictures of contractor shops. They don't customarily have, because normally a contractor shop is a garage and an office. It has a headquarters for a business. It's not a place where there's a large permanent debris processing facility. That's not customarily incidental. And it's also not at all subordinate. It would be the 1752 site is actually larger than the other site. It's 4.7 acres. It's not a minor part of the site, and it would not be a minor part of the impact. When it was operating illegally, it was a very major, it was the impact. And my clients have video if you want to see it. So for all those reasons, we don't think this can be slipped in as an accessory use. And more importantly, it would undermine the whole purpose of the Highway Business District and the Gateway Overlay, because what this use is it's a separate use that is not allowed in that zoning district. And yeah, we provided two alternate uses that this use would fit into the categories. One is that it's a solid waste processing facility. Our argument there is that As you just discussed with Mrs. Kinnery, the building inspector correctly determined that collecting, storing, and processing stumps, rock, and soil is regulated by the town and DEC as solid waste management. And the ZBA has set a precedent on the other site that you were discussing that solid waste processing is classified as a sanitary service. And that's why we think that that is the more appropriate classification for this facility. Alternatively, you might classify it as a manufacturing use. The zoning has a category for manufacturing use, which is mechanical or chemical transformation of materials or substances into new products. And there are categories for manufacturing stone products and wood products. Neither of those is allowed in the highway business district. So they could go in the industrial district. So our contention is that this facility is a material processing facility, and it doesn't belong in the highway business zoning district, which is set up for businesses like retail, restaurants, things like that. An industrial facility belongs in the industrial zoning district, and it can't be slipped in as an accessory use when it would be a major processing facility. So we're asking the ZBA to reverse only that one portion of the building inspector determination that found that material processing is permissible as an accessory use at this location.
Was there anything else? Were there any things that Mr. Moriello and Ms. Svensson, were there any, starting with Mr. Moriello, was there anything that Ms. Svensson just said that you did not find reasonable or that you disagreed with, other than the manufacturing, which you've made clear?
Well, I would say that the definition that's in the zoning law, in that section 245-56, does not say that the use has to be subordinate. Doesn't say that. The wording of that definition is accessory use customarily incident to any of the uses listed herein and not on the same lot. That it doesn't say anything about being subordinate. Those words aren't in that part of the definition. They're in a previous part of the definition, but they're not in the definition for an accessory use that's not on the same lot. And I think the plain meaning of that speaks for itself. Again, the object is to prohibit my client from doing anything on this piece of property that's related to their business. That's the object. The object is all those things that they do to make a living, the opponents don't want them to do anymore. So they have alternatively tried to fit this into several different categories. No one's trying to slip anything in. It's not, I don't think we're slipping anything in. I think it's clear. So from my perspective, the object is to, just to stop this use from occurring. And I would just submit that in the highway business district, contracting uses, excavation uses, those things are reasonable uses of property.
But Mr. Moriello, would you agree that excavation doesn't normally take place on site? The excavators go to other sites.
Yeah, I think that's correct. They're not, they're not looking to excavate at this site. The interesting thing, the funny thing about the zoning law is that actually mining and quarrying is allowed in the HP district, which is of interest. It's not relevant to this decision. But that's really all I have. If Gina, I don't know if Gina has anything else.
All I want to say is all along, we've been told all along when we bought these properties, we were told that what we wanted to do was feasible. My husband and I are in our 60s. We're not looking to slip anything in. We're not looking to break any laws. We're not here to be rebels at 65 years old and challenge the town, in a town we have spent 60 years in and know everybody here. That's never been our intent. And we're made to, and all I want to do is conduct my business, which we have been. I've been to more planning board workshops than anybody around. We've been told that it's feasible. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done all this. So somewhere along the line, we've lost our footing, and people have to, it's not Miss Fenson's interpretation, and it's not mine, and we are at the mercy of the town and the ZBA to see if we could all make this work for everyone.
Right, and the ZBA is not making any aspersions on your business whatsoever.
I understand that, and I appreciate it, but it's just,
Our
it
job
has
that
been a
you
very
gave us,
frustrating. What?
You and your attorney and Ms. Svensson and her clients
Right.
asked us to just interpret the building inspector's
That's
letter
right.
to find out
Right.
whether or not
And-
it's accurate or if something should be changed. And that's all we're trying
Right,
to do is to get your
That's right.
understanding of what he meant. So that's our goal.
Yep.
And
Okay.
the only thing is that according to our attorney, the zoning board's attorney, we do have to have a public hearing to allow the
Yep.
neighbors of your property to
Yep.
to comment on this.
Yes.
So what we will do is, yes. I was just answering Gina. We'll get to that in a second, but Holly has a question.
Hi, I have a question for Mike. Hi, Mike. You were just reading from 24556. What definition were you reading? Because accessory use does include the subordinate requirement, so you must have been reading from something else. Yeah, Emily.
Yeah, there is an accessory use definition, and then there's an accessory use not on the same lot. And the not on the same lot doesn't have the subordinate language in it. And for the
I
sake
don't
of,
even see that. I'm looking
And-
for that definition.
and for the sake of argument, I would say it doesn't matter anyway, whether it's subordinate or not. It's clearly the use that they're using is subordinate. I don't have the zoning law with me. I only have my submittal. That's it.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm online
Well, I know
searching it, and I was trying to follow along, and I could
Well,
not find.
I don't know where Mr. Weeks is, but he's the one who put it under accessory use. Wouldn't he know the definition?
Can I
Yeah, but
clarify?
my question had to do with the way Mike Moriello characterized it.
Oh.
That's, yeah. Okay.
Yes, Lisa, Emily, sorry.
Thank you. This is a really important point about which accessory use definition applies. And I just want to really look carefully at both the July 8th letter, which is what we're appealing, and the July 15th clarification.
June 8th?
I'm sorry, yes, June
June
8th.
8th.
Yes, exactly. The June 8th letter says in the second paragraph, this is the building inspector's determination, that the zoning law permits accessory uses customarily incident to any use listed herein and on the same lot. On the same lot. That's what he says in the June 8th determination. In the July 15th determination, if you look at the caption of it, it's about this lot, 1752 Route 212. And it says in the second paragraph, in the event Mr. and Mrs. Kennery do in fact proceed with acquiring site plan approvals, and then it says at the above referenced location. So this is talking about Route 1752 Route 212. It says if they get site plan approval to operate a construction business on this lot, then operating the construction equipment to screen overburden would be subordinate to the primary use. This is not a decision saying that it's an accessory on a different lot. It's not saying that. It's an accessory on the same lot. That's the determination, and that was not appealed.
That is appealed, Emily. That's precisely why I appealed it. That's why I appealed it. So
Okay.
That's not going to work. That's not going to work. It is appealed. And as far as I'm concerned, Albie can rule if he wants to on the question of whether or not you can have an accessory use that's not on the same lot. It's fine with me if he does that. If you need clarification, I think it's clear from what he did that that's what he meant. But if you guys insist on him clearing it up again, we're in a process where we have a public hearing coming up. That's more than fair to have him do that.
I guess so And
But that's
this is
precisely
still,
why,
but Mike, this is Holly, and this is exactly why I asked the question, because as you know, I'm an attorney and I tried reading the plain language of the statute and I couldn't find accessory use on a different lot. So it's not that clear. I'm just saying it's not patently obvious. And if we're going to have a public hearing and put things in front of people, I think we should have things very clear.
I agree, Holly. I have
Yes,
no
I agree
objection
too.
to going back to Alvy. That's not a problem.
Right.
I'm
Can I-
not saying it has to be Alvy. I'm just saying it's not clear to me at this moment. And I think we can't just say something is so if it's not actually clear.
Mike,
And
this
I
is
think that's
Patty
been the
again.
kind of the problem all along, you know.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
How do you define the term incident? Because you were using that a lot, that Albie said in his letter, accessory use is customarily incident to any use listed herein. How do you define incident?
Well, it's not defined under the zoning law. So in my February 27th
How would you, when you read that, think of that?
well, hold on 1 second, if you will. Hold on. In my February 27th submittal, I go into describing the term incidental. And the term incidental with respect to a principal use.
Can't hear you, Mike.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Can anybody hear?
Yeah, we hear you, Mike.
Can you hear me
Okay.
now? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Chairperson. The term incidental is not defined under the Saugerties zoning law. So in my submittal, I went to the Merriam-Webster definition and said incidental is defined as, quote, being likely to ensue as a minor consequence. The legal definition of a legal dictionary definitions term incidental as contingent upon or pertaining to something that is more important, that which is necessary, appertaining to or depending on another known use as the principal. So I gave those definitions as examples of what should be read into the zoning law, because the zoning law doesn't define the term incidental.
Speaking just for myself, between this application and another one that we recently had, there are a couple of areas that I found need further definition. I mean, I think you're right that things should be defined. It would help solve a lot of problems. So that's duly noted. That criticism is duly noted. But in lay terms, when I read the term incident to, I think of minor, something that is not as important as the main. And so that was just my interpretation of reading that. And so that's why I was curious. And it doesn't say incidentally, it says incident too. So, but your point is well taken, that it's not defined.
And I think something that also may help is our primary business is excavation. We're not going to be running, our grinder doesn't run 5 days a week, 7 to 5, and neither does the screener. They run at the minimum, at maybe 20 hours a month. It's not primary to us. It's not going to be running 5 days a week. We're able to operate 7 to 5. It's not that. We only have 5 people that work for us. They're making it seem like we're building a big processing plant. We have 5 people that work for us. It's not we're primary excavators, because without us excavating, we have no overburden to run through the screener or the grinder. So I think in terms of perspective, maybe I hope that gives a little perspective. We're not a big processing plant.
It does. It does. And
thank you.
And I appreciate that. Are there any questions?
And we don't. And we don't take in dirt from other places. We only use our own dirt. Any dirt we sell delivered. So people aren't going to be coming on the site.
You can't bring it in from outside of Saugerties anyway.
Right.
That's
right.
the law.
Yeah, there's not. Well, that was an accusation that we had the last time around. We're not going to be having rows of truck lining up even to buy dirt. We only sell dirt delivered. We don't want people on the site. Lots of times we're not even on the site.
Are there
anyway.
any questions from the board? Henry, Joe, any questions? Randy, do you have any questions? No? Does Heather Hutchison or Mr. Cantor, do you have anything that you would like to add to this?
Yeah, I'll just clarify a couple of things. So we do live up on the ledge above where this activity has already occurred for many months. Before there was any site plan approval for the site where the shop is, before that was done, before there were any applications to do anything on the site right below us, there was screening of soil and grinding and rocks and excessive amounts of noise. The amount of noise was unbelievable and unbelievably stressful, especially since we work at home. And there was an enormous amount of dust. If it was the least bit dry, we had, when every time they would screen materials and run these machines, we had red dust, had nothing to do with household dust, all through our house. Our house had to stay closed up all day long, while they did sometimes all day long ran these machines with clouds of dust coming up. Where we're talking about 25 feet away from where our bedroom is. This is not some distant thing that's far away from us. I have video. I can't share my screen with you right now, but I could show it to you with my phone. I have video of this happening. The dust created respiratory problems for me, and there were health problems for my wife from the noise and the stress, because she suffers from a traumatic brain injury. So, this is not the kind of thing that happens in our residential and highway business zoned neighborhood. It's not fair, really, to the residents, and we're not the only ones who are impacted by this. We're just the ones who are most directly impacted. We have Immune Shine down below us on 212, a tea shop. It used to be a children's ceramic and art facility. We've got Red Onion. We've got the Pineapple Inn. We've got highway businesses that are highway businesses. It's one thing to have a shed, and it's another thing to do, have industrial activities below your bedroom at 6:30 in the morning.
Thank you. Anybody here have any other questions? All right, so as I mentioned, we are going to have a public hearing for this. So would anybody like to make a motion for public hearing? Holly?
I will make the motion for a public hearing
At the October meeting?
at the October meeting.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Okay. So let's do a roll call vote, please. Henry?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Randy? Can't hear
I'll
you.
mute.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So Mike, Kevin will be in touch with you about what you have to do in terms of getting the cards out and the letters out to the people 500 feet. He'll give you the addresses and so forth. And they're certified letters, and the cards have to be returned to Kevin. So Kevin, you'll be in touch with him tomorrow or the next day and let him know.
Yes, I'll do that. Is the email okay, Mike?
Mike, email okay?
Yes, Kevin, do you have my email?
I do.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we can, does the board want us to do it? Is Emily okay with us doing it? I just don't want to,
Well,
we
we're
both
gonna-
have appeals here, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Would both of you like to agree to what the letter is? I mean, we're going to include the letter that you're going to be, so that we can share both of those and have it come from both of you. It's up to you how you want to handle it. I'll leave that to the two of you to figure
And
out.
And should we, I guess, should we ask Albie to clarify? Is that something the board would be interested in?
No, we're gonna,
Okay.
we're going to
Okay,
do our job, which is to say that the letter is okay or the letter is not
A
okay.
lot of feedback, Patty.
Sorry, I fixed this. Our job is to just make a ruling on the interpretation and send it to you, and we'll send it to Alvy, and then it'll move on from there. Okay?
yeah, and as far as the notices go, I mean, we can do it any way you want. I don't, Emily, you want to?
Yeah, we're flexible. I don't know what your normal practice is. Do you send them out from your office or do you give us?
No, we don't send them out at all. They go out from the applicants. Only one set needs to go out, but it needs to be to everybody who's 500 feet from Kinry West, the 11, is it 92? What, 1172?
1752.
From that address. So it's 500 feet, and they are alerted to the public hearing, let them know what time and how to attend online, because it will be online, and or by phone, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, we're happy to do it. So either way, maybe Kevin can send it to both.
He'll
Get
be in
my
touch with
stuff
both
and
of you.
We'll work it out. Yeah,
Work it
thank
out.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. That's not a problem.
Excellent.
And Patty, do you also publish in the paper? Do you publish in the
Yes.
newspaper?
Yes,
Do you do that, or do you need us to do that?
I will do that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Right. And you're just going to take care of getting those letters out to everybody.
Yeah, we'll coordinate with Emily on that. Yes.
Okay. So Kevin will send you all the information, and we can even do a draft letter and send it to you for approval, and it'll go out under your signatures, and see you next month.
Thanks so
In
much.
the meantime,
Great,
if you need anything, we're here.
Well, thank you
but,
to the board for your time. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, no, thank you
Thank
both
you.
for
Thank
being
you.
very accommodating. You explained a lot. We learned a lot. Gina, thank you very much for, I
Oh,
mean,
you're welcome.
I'm taking away from this, quite honestly, that you're okay with the first portion of that, which is that it would go to the town board and it would also need a permit. So the only thing that
Right.
seems to be hanging you all up right now is the accessory use.
Right. Yeah,
So
and I'm
that's-
trying to get that clarified too. Right, I think we're all on the same page just for the
That's progress.
clarifications and to move forward. Right, right, we are.
Absolutely. Definitely good progress. Okay, thank you
Yeah.
all very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Okay,
Next
bye.
month.
Thank you.
Have a nice night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Bye.
Kevin, were you able to send a text to Kim? Did you get a response? Okay, can we just take like a 3-minute break? I just want to make sure that I touch base with our lawyers and let them know that we're going to start. Thanks. Okay, so I see that we have the Verizon personnel is on here. Three 380-7336. 336. My fault. Give her a call, tell her now. Okay. Mr. Olson, are you here? I said 8:15 and we're a little bit early.
Why don't we take 5 minutes, Patty, and give him time to come on? You're
Can you hear
muted.
me now?
Oh, there you go.
We're going to take 5 minutes just to make sure all of the people who are working on the Verizon, Tarpon Towers 2 and Verizon, because I had told them 8:15 and it's only 8:06. 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break, everybody. Thanks. So now you can hear me again? Tim, can you hear me? Okay. All right, everybody. So I think everybody's logged on. So we're going to start Verizon section of the meeting. Tarpon Towers 2, Verizon. So Tarpon Towers 2 and Verizon have sent us a revised application. Let's find it here. With revised setbacks. And Mr. Olson, if you are ready, we are going to let you present this revised application.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening. So let me just share my screen quickly and hopefully it works. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is an excerpt from one of the sheets in our revised site plans that we sent to you. And since we were before the board last, we conducted some field work. And as a result, as you probably are aware, we identified some federal wetlands. They're not state wetlands. And the significance of that is that federal wetlands do not have a required setback or buffer zone. Whereas you may recall at the fire department site, it was a state wetland that we were near, and we were actually inside the 100-foot buffer, and we were working with DEC to get approval for that. But the original tower location that we showed previously on the plans was inside of the southern portion of that federal wetland that we show on this plan as just a kind of a slanted horizontal line that is white. And we had to move our tower slightly, about 40 feet to the south, to make sure that we had enough room to get outside of the federal wetland. And we are currently working with the Army Corps of Engineers for them to confirm everything. So by doing this, we eliminated the need for one of the setback variances. You may recall that we previously applied for 3 setback variances. There were 2 side setback variances and 1 front yard setback variance. By moving the tower to the south, which is right here now, we were able to actually comply with the 239-foot side setback requirement for the tower. So we eliminated the need for that variance. Of course, doing that, we got closer to this part of the proper side property line. So we had to increase the variance that we're looking for. Essentially, we went from previously it was 189 feet, and now it's 148 feet. It also slightly decreased the setback to the front. Previously, it was 179 feet, and now we show it at 153 feet.
Scott, do you want questions on the map as you're showing it, or do you want us to wait till the end?
Oh, you're totally your call. Feel free to do what is most convenient for you.
Okay, I want to ask a question about this map. I'm looking at your arrows. Let's just say to the one that's going towards Industrial Road.
Okay.
Why does the setback stop right before the property boundary? What?
Okay.
It looks like you could pick up a couple of feet there.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but there's this line here. Because we're on a curve, the tower, and I don't know if Steve Matthews is on. I hope he is, but bottom line is we measure it to the property line. And I think that's the answer, and I haven't heard Steve chime in, so doesn't sound like he is there.
Well, and the same thing happens to the Desch property. It stops before. It looks like you put a line there right before. It looks like you're not right at that property line.
Yeah, and again, I think it we'll confirm that, but I think what it is for presentation purposes, because I mean, what they should just draw is a line from there to there, where my cursor went, but because
The
they have,
last time this happened and we called your attention to it, we actually picked up a couple of extra feet, which is why
We
I'm
did.
asking.
we
Patty,
did.
may I interject something, Patty?
Sure. Sure,
Can you
Henry,
hear
go
me?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think you might see that stop. You're saying to the property, that's not the property line. You got to remember that that's a town road. So that's a 50-foot right of way. Now, if that's showing, if those lines are the right of way lines, then you're correct. But if that's just the existing roadway from that center line, the town owns 25 feet each side of that center line. So that might be why they're showing it as such.
Well, it shows industrial road as being on the opposite side of that kind of marked line. So I think whatever that space is between there, I don't know whether that's a shoulder or, I don't know, because it doesn't.
No, what that's probably a right of way line. I'm assuming.
I think Henry's correct. It's we're because the setback goes to the right of way line to the public road. That's where we're measuring it from.
Okay,
I mean, yes, we could gain some setback if it was to the property line, but that's not exactly how the code is written.
okay. And
Yeah.
before we move on from this, you had to move the tower base 41 feet south.
Correct.
Why then do you have less room for, you have a reduced distance to the, to industrial road? It seems kind of
Because
counterintuitive.
we'll have Steve confirm it, but the way I'm looking at this visually is by moving it south, we're actually moving it down towards the curve of the road more. So if we were back, oh, you can't see my hand, sorry. If we were back up here north, we come out to this area here, but coming down here, we're getting a little closer to this curve. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with that
Okay,
because of the curve of the road.
Excuse me, Patty.
Yeah.
Just for an observation from this professional engineer, and we'll wait for the guy that sealed it. These are typically done what's called tangential, TANGENTIAL, to the line. And so if you look at that, you'll notice that the closest point is to the road that the first line you see that's here, but then it gets further away because it's tangential to the curve. If they moved it in, it would kind of be cheating. The same thing is down here. Tangential requires that it be at that angle. Bring it down here and you'd get more. It's strictly the way the engineer would do this because of the way they do plot plans like this. And as you said, he gained a couple of feet. It really is probably insignificant to your review, but this fellow over here should have been here to explain that to you, but that is my professional engineer's opinion of what you're seeing
thank you,
here.
Ron.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
You're correct, Ron.
Thank you, Henry. Okay,
Ron
I'm sorry,
explained it much.
Scott, go ahead.
No, Ron explained it much better than I could. So, thank you, Ron. Anyway, so now we submitted a revised application form that eliminates the need for a third setback variance. Now we have two setback variances, one side, one front. And we put the corresponding numbers that are requested for the setback on that revised application form. So the new plan set you have in front of you basically is it's a redesign of the compound, redesign of the tower location by moving it approximately 40 feet to the south. We still show some landscaping along the north and east side of the compound, and nothing else in terms of tower height has changed. It's still the same tower height that we're requesting. So this is the same. The Verizon antennas are at an antenna centerline height of 146 feet. Top of the proposed monopole is 155 feet. You may recall that We are providing space, enough space so that emergency services folks can use this tower rent-free if needed. And so in terms of that, the plans are there. If you have any questions on the plans, I will be
Well,
happy to do.
You note on the on one of the maps that the ground elevation, I'm assuming that's at the base of the tower, and correct me if I'm wrong, is 172.7 feet. AMSL. What is AMSL?
AMSL is, well, I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm not an engineer, but it's
Above mean sea
basically
level.
Yes, above means yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
So
what? Say it again, please.
It's what they do is they measure the distance above the mean sea level. The tower is 100 and what is it, 56 feet AGL, which is above ground level, the ground at that point. But the land there is a certain height above the mean sea level of the Atlantic
Okay.
Ocean, and
Okay.
that's all that means. While it comes into play in the calculation of coverage, I think for what you're seeing here is they're just the important thing. Just would add that I have questioned or just curious about. I think you'll find that the elevation of the land at this location is, I think you said 174 AMSL. Is that right? Was it 173, 174?
It's 4 inches higher on this location than on the
Four,
prior one.
4
That's
feet
what they
higher.
say. 4
4 feet
inches. Or 4
Okay.
feet?
Yeah,
I
4
thought it was
feet.
4 inches.
Yeah. And that is, of course, my big question in this. It is, and this will come out later when Mike gets on, I guess, but I should not to complicate things, but just to help you out to answer your question. It's you know, ground elevation is based upon the sea level. So if you have a mountain in the way, that elevation might be 190 feet or 200, 300 feet above mean sea level. They do something else then they call above average terrain. There are 3 ways to do all of this, and it's very, very confusing. But basically, when something is only 4 feet difference in the location of one site to the other site, I'm still troubled or trying to figure out, and I hope Mike can explain this, why the height differential has to be so significant. And it may be because it's 1,100 feet away, but to answer your question, AMSL above mean sea level, AGL above ground level, and then HAAT average height above level. Okay, so you got 3 ways to measure this, but what Scott is doing here is absolutely right. Okay, I'll be quiet.
Okay.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Good, Scott.
And so as part of there was a request at the last meeting we attended and to provide the elevation height for not only this site, but also the prior site, the Mount Marion Fire Department site. And so we did, we provided this a survey basically that it's measured within X number of feet. But so for this site, it does have the 172, what was it, 4, and that we provided, I think the property was 175 over at Mount Marion Fire Department, but that's in the information.
What was the Mount Marion one, please?
My recollection was it was 175 even, and it's in the application material.
So this one is less. This site is 3 feet less than the Mount Marion site.
A few feet less, that's correct.
So it's 3 feet lower than the Mount Marion firehouse site.
Right, and within those surveys, by the way, there's also a plus or minus of a certain number of feet, so it could be.
I get it.
It could be more on each side, but generally you're within 3 or 4 feet. Yes. Okay. So that's information was provided as part of our.
Well, that's important for us to know. That's important for us to know.
Yes, and go ahead, Patty. I'm sorry.
Well, because the reason why it's important and why the height of the tower is an issue is because you are now in the predicament of having to request 2 variances that the tower height, the variances don't fit with the tower height. In other words, the tower height in the other one that we had just finished with that we had to redo, the variances were over and above the tower height. This one, these are not. The tower is higher than the variance requests, and that presents a problem because you don't want a home to be within the fall distance of a tower, not counting the extra half that we would put on it, but this is the actual tower height. And that's problematic. And I was hoping that you would avoid that in some way, whether it be the reduction of the tower height or something, but
Yeah,
that is just
I'm not,
something that we have to take into consideration.
no, I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure, well, I'm having some trouble following it because if I remember correctly, one of the setbacks that we were looking at the fire department site was 19 feet, and that just sticks in my head.
Right,
Um,
it was very close.
I'm sorry, very, very close. So I realize that we don't meet the setbacks here, but we're at least further away. And this tower,
You're not
uh,
further away, Scott.
from the property lines, we are. Like, and compared to the fire department, we were 19 feet away from the nearest property line.
No, Scott.
That's true. That's true.
You,
It
you're
was
you're true.
inside
You're true in what you're saying, but the law is saying 1.5 times the height of the tower.
Right.
Do you agree
Right.
with that?
Well, your law says the height, yes, that the tower setback must be equal to 1.5 times the height of the tower.
Okay.
Yes.
So
So
you do the math. Tell me how this one here is better.
because, okay, at the fire department, it was a 120-foot tower, right? So that would have required 180-foot setback, right?
Yeah.
Am I doing that right? Okay.
That's
We were 19 feet away. So I'm not going to do the calculation in percentage, but now we're at least, we are, we're certainly a lot further than 19 feet away from the closest property line.
Right.
That's my point is that the other
But your
point is that,
but your tower is 35 feet higher.
oh, that's correct. That's correct. But again, that's something for the RF folks can discuss. But I think if you looked at the RF,
Okay, let's go stop all this here.
okay,
And my biggest concern, and I'm going to be right
Okay.
up front with you. Are you going to have Tarpon Towers, Verizon, whoever's going to take the liability here? Is there going to be an insurance to cover if that tower does go over onto someone else's property, any damage to the adjoining properties on all four sides?
yeah, we absolutely have insurance. Tarpon Towers has insurance. Verizon has insurance. It's significant insurance. The other thing we can do, if that's a concern, I know it's been done in other municipalities. And again, I'll just state, I'm not an engineer, but I know that they were able to design towers with some type of a break point to try to ensure that if there was a failure, which is extremely remote, I mean, you don't hear of that sort of thing happening, but that it can be designed to actually fall within, depending on the break point, within the property that it's located on.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
Okay.
But again, are the adjoining property owners going to be indemnified under your policy, named property 1, 2, 3, 4, in case it does go over, because we are talking significant amount of distance?
So I will get to the insurance people to talk to them specifically about how that all works, because like I said, we have significant, substantial insurance, and I'll find out exactly what the details of it. I know the amounts, I know that information, but I want to ask the question to them. Okay, let's say this tower falls over, then how does it work with the neighbors if it was to fall on their property? I'll get that.
There you go.
I'll get that.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. You'll get that information by the next meeting.
I will.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Let's go on.
You're
This is
welcome. You're welcome. So, all right, so we took plans. We've given you the survey information about the two sites. We also provided a letter from Tectonic Engineering. We wanted them to reevaluate what the visuals look like with respect to moving this tower 41 feet to the south. And that letter's in your packet. And it was Tectonic's opinion that by moving the property, moving the tower 40 feet on the property, that it would not move or affect the zone of visibility of the tower whatsoever. And they gave references to certain photos in the simulation to kind of explain their thinking and their analysis. So I just wanted to raise that with you. And, in terms of the RF, we did not have any additional RF information provided at this point. I was not privy to conversations with Ron and Mike, so I'm not sure if anything was expected. My understanding was maybe not much was expected, but I think Ron is looking for some type of clarification about why the height of the tower is what it is, as he alluded to earlier. And my view of that is we have information in the record that shows the service that you would get from the tower at the height we're proposing, as well as that from the Mount Marion Fire Department tower. And Mike had a little description and write-up in there about that. So I don't know if that's something that, needs to be discussed at all.
Well, Scott, since we're talking about the tectonic and the visual assessment, this is a good opportunity to challenge and take exception to the email that you sent me that the zoning board was not able to do a site visit because the overgrowth is so extensive. And it is. I went over to Industrial Road and looked that we could not go to where the base of the tower is going to be. Now, you know that on the application that is filled out, it says there that the zoning board makes site visits. It's not a question, it's not permission, that's what we do. And the reason we do it is because a dot on a map doesn't give us the same perspective as being on the ground and seeing where the tower is going to be, taking a look at the properties around it, and it gives us a better sense of the impact. So I didn't respond to you because, quite honestly, I was really angry that was the response, that it was just, we can't do it because you couldn't guarantee our safety and our health. So what I'm saying to you is, between you and Tarpon Towers, two pretty substantial companies, figure out a way to clear a path from the back of the company there, the parking lot, to the base of the tower. I don't care about the roped in or the fenced in area. It's the base of the tower, so that we can get a better sense of where on that property we are and the impact on some of the residents that were a little different from the last time we did it. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, and I will talk to Brett. Unfortunately, he was on earlier, but I received a text that he had to deal with a family emergency, so he had to drop off.
Yeah.
I'll talk to him. Now, on that issue, we never said you cannot go out there.
I can't hear you, Scott. Can you move in closer to your mic?
It's right by my mouth, so hopefully I might have been covering it up. Can you hear me now? If I don't have it in front of me, but I have a pretty good memory, and we never said you cannot go out there. We said simply.
No, you said you didn't say we couldn't. I mean, I suppose if I put on hazmat gear, I could have. But
Correct.
The point is that we shouldn't have to go to take great chances just to walk through brush that is so overgrown to get to see where the tower site is going to be. That's all I'm saying.
Understood. And okay, I just want to make sure that we never said that, don't
No,
go.
you didn't say
I did say,
you just warned me against it. You warned us against it.
Yeah, because I know I've been attacked by hornets in those situations, and it's not a fun time.
And the warning was fine.
I was concerned about your safety.
Fix the problem.
We'll see what we can do. We will see what we can do about a brush hog or what have you.
Yeah, get something in there and clear a path, and don't worry about the other area, just the tower base, because that's where we need to see.
Okay, very good. Okay. Now, so my presentation, I'm kind of done with that. I would just like to, clearly we can answer any questions that you may have, but we would like to see if we can get this back ready for a public hearing for next month if possible.
Well, I have, before I ask the board what their questions are, I have two issues to talk about. One is in tab 2, page 4, it starts. You make repeated references in this revised application to the Mount Marion Firehouse being a type 4 tower. And it's not just one statement, it's continuing through this whole thing about the alternatives and so forth. It was never a type 4 tower. I know you wanted to call it that, but it wasn't. Type 4 has criteria, 2 criteria, which you know. One, it has to be comparable to the tower that's already on the site. And we all know that the Mount Marion Firehouse tower right next to their building is not in any way comparable. And also it had to be previously approved or permitted, which it was not.
Right.
So it's a type 5 tower. Tarpon Towers knew it was that because that's how they applied for the variances as a type 5 tower. I would like to lay this to rest for the record, because as you will know, we create a record with these meetings and with the materials that we submit, and to just get over calling Mount Marion Tower type 4. It was going to be a type 5. If we approved it, it would have been a type 5. And this is a type 5 tower, and just lose that reference from here on in. Are we agreed?
We're agreed. We were only
Okay.
trying to provide contextual information. We tried to make it clear that we believed it was, you believed it wasn't, and we're good with this now going forward.
Right.
The context
Okay.
is there.
So then no longer will I see it being referenced as a type 4 tower in any further applications.
Correct.
On the Tri-Leafs Cultural Resource Inventory, report that they handed in was dated August 19th. When was it conducted? Do you know offhand when they actually did it?
It should say.
They
in the
talked
report.
about digging for artifacts, and they talked about a variety of different things they did. Considering the condition of the property with the overgrowth, I would like to know when they did that.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
I know when they submitted their report, but it doesn't say when they did the work. They obviously did that work sometime between time that you put this on pause and when we got the application. And so
In May.
and also,
So this was done, so some of the, I'm just reading this now. Looks like the cultural resource inventory was completed in May of 2021. But I'll go through it and we'll see if there are any
okay, so
differences.
it was done before you moved to the site or after you moved to the site.
Would have been after. Would have been after. As part of our due diligence, we
Okay.
entered a lease with the owner. I forget the date specifically, but it might have been back in February of this year. So yeah.
And they mention a pedestrian survey. What is a pedestrian survey?
I don't know. I'll find out for you.
Okay. Good to know that.
Yep.
Board members, any questions for Scott up to this point? Anything from Dan or John and Kim or Ron? Okay. Hearing none, you
I
can
have a
keep.
quick question, Patty. Actually, I don't know. Can you hear me? I know sometimes my microphone is a little low. Hear me better?
Yeah, Kim, we can barely hear you.
Okay. Scott, I know in your cover letter you had mentioned about the silhouetted against the sky variance, and if it was needed, then the application covered that. Do you have any, I know which the 3 sites that you're talking about, but do you have like a particular height as to how far above the tree line those viewpoints are?
Does the ZBA have that? Is that what you're asking?
Well, Scott didn't really in the application, Scott, you didn't really provide a particular height, like how tall above the tree line. I can see on the visual balloon test, but is there a way that Tectonic can provide a measurement as to how far above, so the ZBA knows what variance is being considered?
I will ask. I will
Okay.
ask. I've seen some
helpful.
in the past. I've seen some. Oftentimes they would try to estimate trees, but I'll see what they typically would do in this situation. Let you know.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, Scott, go ahead. Is there anything else?
Patty,
Yeah.
do you ever get an explanation of why the height difference between this and the firehouse site of the tower?
Well-
Are we waiting for that now, or you just want him to
We're
have an
waiting for Mike to get on. He was on before. Do you know where he is, Scott, so that he can answer
Mike
those
is-
questions?
Mike is on.
I'm here. I can
Oh,
see
good.
me.
There he is.
I can see me and I can see you guys. Hopefully somebody can see me here.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Hi, Mike. Well, this is the second time this has come up, so perhaps you could address it. We are at a lower, I love to say this, we are at a lower AMSL than at the firehouse. So why is it that the firehouse was going to be 124 feet and we are still at 159? Why is that so?
Well, there's quite a few things here that we should probably talk about. The first is the numbers that you're using for your AMSL are coming from surveys. And those surveys are what's called 1A accuracy surveys, which means they have plus or minus 3 foot accuracy. That's times 2 different locations. Now, at the end of the day, the difference in ground elevation between the 2 locations that we're referring to, Mount Marion Fire Department and this industrial zone, are relatively similar. Okay, it's like splitting hairs to try to discuss 1 foot difference between the 2 of them. What's important for us is the distance the site is located relative to the coverage objectives, as well as the strategic positioning and angle that the RF signal, because the RF signal at 2 gigahertz, which is what our mid-band frequencies operate at, operates on what's known as LOS, another acronym for you tonight, and I'll explain that. LOS stands for line of sight. Line of sight is, what that means is as the site moves further away, it's obstructed by other local clutter, which could be hills, could be trees, could be buildings. And so when we run the propagations and we compare the 2 locations, the idea was, and the earliest question that we had in this process was, could you move it into the industrial zone and get the same coverage? And that answer was no. And then the next question we received was, if you were able to find a willing landlord in the industrial zone and move it there, what height would it need to be at? Well, it would need to be taller because we're further away. We have what's called free space path loss, and that's the signal degradation that takes place over a distance. And so as we move further away from our target objectives, in this case, the one we're specifically talking about is the Mount Marion housing community, that area is now further away. And so in order for us to maintain the same level of service in that area that we had intended to serve with the fire department, it's necessary to increase the ACL. The ACL is another acronym. That stands for antenna centerline. And so the antenna centerline that we're proposing here is 146 feet, with the tip of our antennas at 150 feet. The increased height of the tower above that is proposed not by Verizon, but by the tower owner to oblige the request to allow for space for co-location of emergency services above the top of the Verizon site. So I would say that as we consider the setbacks and we consider what these different heights are and what they mean, that from the Verizon standpoint, we're talking about a tip of antenna of 150 feet. So that may make a difference in your review of the drawings and the setbacks. And I suggest that we work together to try to find placement. You know, if there's a couple feet here or there that may make a difference. I think Ron in the past is, and I are both in agreement that your industry standard of 1-to-1 tower setback, you know, if that's something that could be met, that is probably something that would be of importance to several people that are interested in this application. So
Now,
that's
Ron,
something to consider.
Mike, I know that in the application that we got, the revisions, it mentions that the distance was not so great, the change was not so great that it would impact the RF maps. But
Right.
I know I'm being contrary here, but you have told us in the past that even 25 or 30 feet can upset the mapping because of a variety of different reasons. I also requested that we get RF maps for this site, this new site. I didn't get them. I'm hoping that you will get them to us because it would
Well, the
be
maps that are
interesting
submitted
to
in the
see.
application are the maps for this site, and they're certified me, the RF engineer, who is the #1 person that those maps are intended for. Those maps are primarily and by design intended for RF engineers to review as a piece of information in evaluating what the proper height is. They're often misused by boards and others that are not experienced RF engineers, that aren't experienced in building these sites at various heights with various antennas and azimuths and down tilts and power levels and seeing these sites work and not work. I have 26 years of experience in reviewing these maps, activating sites, testing sites, and then when we make mistakes, fixing the network later on. So it's my expert testimony that these maps are exactly the maps that you've requested, that we've already submitted.
I think there was a little bit of an insult in there towards the board, but I'll take that for what it is. But we happen to have as an advisor somebody who is a professional RF engineer to whom we look for advice. And when he tells us, no, Mike is right, he's very blunt with us. But if you don't want to show us the propagation maps, that's something we'll take into consideration. I would very much like to see them just to make sure they are just the way they were the last time.
The one
So
thing
I would
that,
say, when we're talking about the different locations, so I mentioned to you about the elevation. You had brought up the fact that it was 1 foot difference, as if that was to be some, significant piece of information that could change the difference in the height of the tower. It's not. And the 40 feet, the 1A survey that I mentioned, you have a vertical tolerance, which is plus or minus 3 feet. 1A surveys are subject to a plus or minus 20 feet horizontal difference, which means the difference that this tower is moving is within, to put it in layman's terms, think of your TV screen, and you have millions of pixels on your TV screen. Well, it's the same thing with what we call bins in the computer propagation model. You're asking me to generate new propagations within the same pixel of my screen. So there's no change. It's within the same pixel. Now, how is that different from Mount Marion location? That's using TV terms, that's 25 pixels away. That is substantial. But for this case, what we're talking about is within that very same pixel. So the granularity and the power of the tool, which is phenomenal compared to what we've had available to us in the past, we are within that same pixel. We are within the tolerance of what we have predicted and what we've used to justify the site, which is submitted and available to you for review.
Ron, do you have anything to say about that? Ron?
Was that Ron? Here I am, yes.
Yeah, did you have any comment about that or?
Mike, just for the record, Mike is an excellent RF engineer. Been doing this for 26 years at Verizon Wireless, and he's really a bright guy. I've only been doing this for 50 years, and I did it in the old days when the FCC required you calculate coverage by something. I'll give you another term today. It's called the height above average terrain. In other words, if you're at 500 feet AMSL, but the terrain around you is 1,000 feet above mean sea level, well, that means you're not going anywhere because you're below the average terrain around you. And that's why the FCC models required that one consider the height above average terrain of 8 radials, in other words, 0, 45, 90, 135, 180, all the way around, and then average the terrain between 2 and 10 miles from the site. And they did that because in that near end between 0 and 2 miles, no model was accurate in predicting that. So they said, just give me so in other words, you would take the average terrain every 10 feet, you would, what's the terrain? What's the terrain? What's the terrain? And you'd average it out and you'd see how high this site was above average terrain. And that is the old models that were used. Today, Mike uses some very sophisticated models that are based upon perhaps a guy called Hada or Akamura. These guys did all of these measurements actually in Japan, in Tokyo, and then came up with a model so as to kind of equate to what the real coverage would be. They used real coverage, and they designed a model that kind of mimicked that. And that's what they used. And quite frankly, they're very good. They're very good, but remember, they're models. And my big issue here is that this site is only, 1,100 feet away from the other site. So for Mike to say,
closer now, it might be, it's 41 feet closer than it was.
okay, if for what I'm having a difficult time when Mike talks about free space attenuation. In other words, free space attenuation, that's how tired the RF signal gets from here to there. But it's done over miles. It's not done over 1,100 feet. It's insignificant. It's zero, nothing, nada. And that's why I had requested, because when I look at these, they're so very close to me. They're trying to justify a site, but just for the record, do they need the site? Yes. Because of their 2 gigahertz frequency that Mike talked about, they don't have sufficient capacity. There is no doubt in my mind that they require a site somewhere. The problem in my mind is that for your board is that the evidence models are nice, but we haven't seen radials of HAAT. And in my professional opinion is that you would find very little difference if they picked the spot at this location and the spot at the firehouse, and they ran 8 radials out 2 to 10 miles, they would find zero, nada, no difference in height above average terrain, because there cannot be that much different unless there's a mountain between them. And maybe there is a mountain between the Mount Marion Fire Department and this location. Maybe there is a mountain. I don't know. But that will tell us when you see that. And that's why I said in my last report, and I'm not sure if the applicant, I know Mike and I talked about this, and I can understand his opinion, and I appreciate his opinion. He's a smart guy. He doesn't want to do drive tests. Drive tests are the only way when you have such a small difference in coverage. Drive tests are the way that you can actually say, wow, there is a difference, because that's not relying on any model. That's not relying on a surveyor's measurement of the height of the ground. It's the way the world is. This stuff today about let's follow the science. Well, which I'm not sure I agree with, but that's probably as much as following the science as you could. You measure the stupid thing and you see what it is. And that's really the only way to do it. Unfortunately, it's very expensive. It's time consuming. And someone could say that they have demonstrated that there is a de minimis difference between one site and the other. I am still, as an old RF engineer, I'm troubled by 120 feet versus 150 feet. And that's what really, really troubles me, because I'm sorry, I just can't accept that. They're too close. They're only a foot different in height, no matter how you measure it. And that's what I'm troubled by. And I have no information to say to your board, yeah, okay, they're right. And that's why the nearly gold standard would be to do that. But I can appreciate the fact that, I understand that. And let the evidence that they have supplied to your board base your decision. I've given you my input. It's all I can do. It's a real close one, because Mike did demonstrate with his once again, calculated coverage, that there is an area that doesn't get coverage from one side versus the other. That's calculation. And that's all it is. It's like flying a flight simulator and flying a Boeing 737 MAX. The only way to figure out if it's going to go down or not is actually fly the plane. And the only way to figure out if you're going to get coverage is actually to measure the coverage. In my professional opinion, but it's only me. I'm just an old guy, and I live on the old way of doing it. But do whatever you want to do. Once again, I will say unequivocally, they need a site. Is this the right site? I don't know. Are there alternatives? I don't know. I haven't seen anything. All I know is I'm looking at Mount Marion versus this one. And my professional opinion is that I don't see any big deal in 1,100 feet and 3 feet to justify 120 versus 154. That's all.
Thank you, man.
You bet.
May I just say something, Ron? Maybe a question or two, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
In terms of drive tests, though, but you acknowledge, though, well, you just said it a couple of times, that we need a site. But there are 2 reasons why we need a site. One is coverage, and one is capacity. I mean, that's correct. I think you at one of the prior meetings said, without a doubt, I'm paraphrasing, but that you said our average scheduler something clearly shows huge capacity issues that need to be resolved.
I'm not sure I said huge, but
Okay.
I did say no, it demonstrates it, and that's what I just said. There's no doubt about it, that you do need relief, and the only way you can get that relief is with the 2 gigahertz, the new AWS or PCS frequency bands that you have. And that's, you can't do it with your 800 or your 700 megahertz because they're already out of gas. Even though they cover great, they're out of gas. But that's, I'm not looking at 800 and 700.
Right.
Mike has done a yeoman's job in presenting what the calculated coverage are at, was it 2100, I guess you did, Mike, or 23, whatever it is, right?
100.
21, I think.
No, okay, fine. I always get 21, 23. They're all the same, actually. There's very little difference. But that's how he's demonstrated. So that's what I've said, Scott. Yeah.
Okay. No, my only point is, though, that drive test data is not going to demonstrate need for capacity.
No, it's going to demonstrate, if you do or do not have the 2 gigahertz coverage in the area that is showing up on your calculated plots as not having sufficient signal strength. That's what it's going to show. That's all.
Okay, so here's my point. I just cut to the chase. We have
Okay.
2 justifications for need. One is coverage, one is capacity. We've provided documentation. Let's throw away the coverage justification right now. On capacity, you've agreed we have a need for it. And the drive test data is not going to confirm or deny that need. So my point is, we could still go forward with the application. Even if you were looking for the drive test data, we still have a valid justification for need for a new site.
But not at 154 feet.
But, you know.
I mean, let's just be clear about that.
Okay.
And Scott, you know, what I base this on, 3 years ago, I finished up a case, T-Mobile versus the city of Roswell, Georgia, that came back from the Supreme Court, all the way back from the Supreme Court. And how did they attempt to ultimately justify it? I was working for the city. I don't work for applicants, as you know. We did extensive drive tests using 2 decibel bins, 2 dB bins. And Mike will say, you know, what a 2 dB bin? Well, you know, you give a signal strength of minus 80 is what you need. I'm just using a number, minus 82, minus 89. And my question is and you know that the way these work, minus 80, minus 81 is weaker, and minus 82 is weaker. So I always ask the engineer, I said, okay, so you designed for minus 80. Yeah, okay. So tell me, will it work at minus 81? Well, any engineer, I believe, would have to say, of course it will. There's no difference. How about minus 82? Yeah, probably, but I can't guarantee it. So that's why we did 2 dB bins for these drive tests. And by the way, ultimately, the drive tests demonstrated that there was 0 difference in 2 sites. And unfortunately, what happened then, because of the commission did a report and order on 5G, and then so the whole thing is still sitting. But it demonstrated it without a doubt, and everyone agreed to that. And all I'm saying here now, is it worth it to do it? I mean, Roswell, Georgia is just outside of Atlanta. Was it worth it to do it there? Yeah, T-Mobile spent a fortune on their engineers and their lawyers and all that stuff. Here in Saugerties, New York, does it matter? Not me, because I don't live there, but maybe to this board it matters. And all I'm trying to do is be an impartial observer. Once again, the site is needed. There's no doubt about it. You've won. But is the height at the new location the minimum height necessary? Minimum height necessary for Verizon Wireless. And by the way, I don't care about AT&T. I don't care about T-Mobile because they're not applicants here. Now, perhaps the person who's building the tower cares about them. I don't know that. I have no idea about that. This application is for one only, Verizon Wireless. And that's all I'm looking for. That's all. But if everyone's happy with this, I'm okay. Okay?
Patty, I just wanted to mention to you that, you know, my comment about the board's use of propagation maps is not directed at this board. It's something that has become somewhat of an industry trend, something that's taken place over many, many years, and a lot of it has to do with the high level of accuracy that these predicted models produce. You know, but it's like a lot of things. It's something that the trained eye is best at interpreting based off experience. That's all I'm trying to draw attention to.
I
And
probably would agree with you if we didn't have Ron Graves working for us, who helps us, because I would have trouble reading them and understanding them without his advice and without his going through it. So I understand it, but and I was just teasing you. I did not feel offended.
that's fine.
Mike, I
And,
have a question
Ron
for you.
said a couple of things that were,
We did, I'm sure.
that I want to provide some additional clarification to, which is, Ron would refer to the 2 gigahertz signal. And we are providing 2 gigahertz signal in building service from the Mount Marion Fire Department at the 120-foot tower height minimally. So we're just barely able to pull that off. So and that's the critical layer that we have available to us, is that's our high bandwidth, high capacity signal is in that 2 gigahertz range, whether it's a PCS or AWS, whatever we call it, it's a representative coverage band. That 2 gigahertz signal is subject to rapid signal degradation relative to 700 and 850 megahertz, which Ron is also referring to. So when we're barely getting that job done, and I will remind you that Ron stated that for our application for the Mount Marion Fire Department, that tower was modest in height and that no additional height justification was necessary. So that's a 120-foot site. Now, we reluctantly agreed to provide the application to move the site into the industrial zone. And the reluctance associated with that was that additional 1,100 or 1,050 now, whatever it happens to be. As we move that site further away, you cannot achieve the same things from a further distance. It just simply doesn't work that way. Physics won't allow it. So as we move 1,100 feet away, roughly, we need to increase the height of the tower. And I will remind you that it wasn't just the distance, it was also the azimuth of the sectors of the antennas. So we had a strategic positioning relative to the coverage objectives of the site that allowed us different orientations between these two sites. We've done the best we can with both locations to make the most out of each location. And in order to do that, we need increased height, and that's what we provided. And for anybody that hasn't seen the RF justification document, there's crystal clear evidence in that document as to the need for the height of this site relative to this position versus Mount Marion Fire Department.
Mike, I have a question for you. You keep on saying
Sure.
you move 1,100 feet north, and I agree with you, no problem. I have an issue with the height of the site versus Mount Marion, and I've asked a number of times, and Scott said, "Oh yeah, we'll get it," and we're still playing with 3 or 4 foot difference, and no one physically went out there and took a shot on Mount Marion site. No one took a shot on the base of the industrial drive shot. So you folks are guessing off of topo maps or something. That's
No.
number one.
No, wait.
But number
sir.
two, you're saying that Mount Marion Park is your objective. Am I correct?
That's one of the objectives which are clearly listed on page 3 of the RF justification document.
Okay. Listen to me out. You went 1,100 feet north, but you probably went, 800 feet west, closer to Mount Marion Park.
No, that's not
You're
true.
closer
This
to Mount Marion
site
Park than you
location is
were at
further
Mount
east.
Marion.
Sorry,
Firehouse.
Henry. This location is further east.
I can't hear you, Mike.
I think you said the location at 17 Industrial is further east.
So we're
How
not,
can it be
Henry,
further
we're not gaining any westerly advantage, to your point. It's actually further east than the proposed Mount Marion location.
How come we can't hear?
I can hear him.
I don't know.
No one else?
Check one, check two.
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Mike.
I hear you now, Mike.
Okay, Henry, I'm sorry. What I was trying to say, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, I just was trying to let you know that it's actually further east rather than west.
How can it be further east? Kings Highway runs basically north-south.
I'm just looking at the map. It's
Mount Marion
it's
Firehouse is on the east side of Kings Highway, correct?
right, but
Industrial
like I-87 runs.
Industrial Drive and the thruway is on the west side of Kings Highway, and the thruway runs approximately from Mount Marion Firehouse to the thruway bridge. I'm guessing, I'm going to say 700-800 feet, and Industrial Drive runs right up to the thruway. So in effect, you're 700-800 feet closer to, want to call it, to the thruway, to Mount Marion, but you're closer to Mount Marion Park.
No,
Henry,
Henry, I can only tell you
if you pull
what,
it up on your phone, Kings Highway there goes dramatically to the right once you get through the four corners, then it goes straight. So I just pulled it up on my phone, and they're correct. It is further away from the park. If you pull it up on your Google.
It doesn't go dramatically to the right. I built it.
Well, if you look at the four corners and then you go past where Howard Drive comes out, the road is almost running east, because I'm looking at the map and the arrows.
Wait a minute, Mike, or Randy. From Mount Marion Four Corners.
Yes, sir.
To
all you gotta do is pull up on Google Maps and you'll see it.
I don't do Google Maps and stuff.
Okay.
That's good. That's good for Mike and them to play games with numbers. But other than that, there, I lowered that vertical curve. So from Mount Marion Four Corners to Greco's house is basically straight. That's still north-south. After you go past Greco's house, after you go past Greco's house, does it start going to the east? Yes, it does. And then you come out by Marpac, and then it swings back around and goes north and south again. But at that point, right by Greco's house, that's pretty much where Industrial Drive goes in, just past that. You go back towards the thruway.
Henry, do you golf?
I certainly do. Not
All right.
anymore.
Well, let me just try to provide you an answer in the just a lighthearted way.
What do you say?
If we were golfing,
slice. Yeah, if we were golfing,
if we're out golfing and we're trying to make this hole, okay, this is a heck of a hole. We're talking about 1,000+ feet straight out, and about 500 feet dogleg right. So that's basically how it works out. So we're like 1,000 feet up north, and then about 500 feet east. So, and I think that's where the 1,100 feet roughly comes from, as far as that 1,200 foot distance. From Mount Marion Fire Department, where we had proposed the tower location. I'm talking one tower location to the other.
And you're saying that the tower at Industrial Drive is east of Mount Marion Fire Department?
Correct. And Henry, I can understand, being on the ground, what you're thinking, but I would strongly suggest to take a look at it on the map with north, obviously straight north, and I think it would be clear to you.
When I'm saying straight, I'm not saying straight north. I'm saying in essence, Kings Highway overall runs north-south.
It has a bend to it, which I think is which throws you off a little bit there. It
has a bend to it just at that loop right there. And then it straightens back out again.
I can't speak to that exactly. All I can tell you is from a north, south, east, and west, and relative to Mount Marion housing development, it's moving us further away from where we're trying to be. And that's what's relevant here, which is the fact that in order for us to serve that community, the propagation maps that we've shown show clearly that as we move further away, we do need an increased height in order to do that. We've been very clear about that from the beginning. And with Ron having previously stated that the 120-foot tower that we proposed at the fire department being modest in height, and so modest that it didn't require height justification, now we're talking about only a 30-foot increase necessary for us to increase our antennas from 116 feet up to 146-foot center line, which is what we've proposed to do, which I would argue is modest in nature. I don't believe that that's a drastic difference. Now, if we're splitting hairs over a couple feet, I would encourage the board to propose something that's going to help us all to get through this. You know, we're open to discussion on the topic. I think we're very close. I think that there's a couple feet that the tower possibly could get slid around in that layout that maybe would help us reach that 1-to-1 setback.
Okay, just answer this for me, because now you're going tower height. I'm talking something totally different. If you go in Industrial Drive, you're going north on Kings Highway. You're turning left onto Industrial Drive.
Yep, I'm looking at it on the map. So you turn left onto
Okay.
Industrial Drive, and then what?
And then how far in Industrial Drive are you? So you're behind Greco's house.
Well, give me a second here. So from Industrial Drive, so from Kings Highway, you're going to be back about, running, roughly along the road. You're about 437 feet back, and then you're going to go west from there.
Okay.
But that
We're gonna go
location of the tower is still east of the location of the tower that we proposed at Mount Marion Fire Department by almost 500 feet. And I realize I've been in the situation before where I could have swore something was a certain way because the house that I grew up in, my father and I argued our entire lives that the house faces north versus faces west. But when you look at it on the map, it's clear to see who was right and who was wrong. And by the way, in that case, I was wrong. My dad was right.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take a gun, and I'll go out there and set up in Greco's front yard, and I'll shoot from there to Mount Marion where your tower is. And you're telling me that I'm going to be shooting to the right.
You won't know where the tower is because you can't get to it and you can't see the
No.
stakes and
I'm
give it
not
up.
even going. I'm not even going to the tower. I'm going to go right in Greco's front yard,
Okay,
which is
Moving on.
Which is on Kings Highway.
I was interested in what Mike, you just said, and which something that Scott said earlier, and that is how we can work together to get that tower out down to a point where we can work with it, where it's not in any way under, so that the setbacks are not more than the tower height itself or close to it. Did you have anything in mind in terms of the tower height that might do that, or positioning of the antenna that might get us there? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't represent the tower company who's the co-applicant on this, so I'm only going to speak from Verizon's standpoint.
That would be
And
great.
from Verizon's standpoint, the tip of the antennas that I propose are 150 feet. And as you know, the tower has additional space available above it for the potential co-location of emergency services. Now, there's a different way to reduce that tower height. We could keep that tower height to 150 and make the tower extendable so that in the event that there were emergency services that wanted to co-locate on the top of the tower at some point in time, you could add a 5-foot extension or whatever is necessary to accommodate those antennas. And that could be a challenge that the board would be able to review at a future date and determine what's right and what's wrong. But in the meantime, it would keep us to a maximum tower height of 150. I could still have the 146-foot center line. The lightning rod, I think, is proposed at a 4-foot lightning rod, would still be on top of the 4-foot or on top of the 150-foot tall tower. And we could look at, and I'm not the A&E, and I don't know if Steve was able to join or not, but not being the A&E representative who put the drawings together and figured out all the setbacks, I certainly am speaking 100% out of turn in suggesting this. But it may be possible that tower, the center of that tower, could yet be moved another 5 feet or whatever within that compound and help to make that 1-to-1 setback something that could be achieved. I'm suggesting this just out of trying to communicate as effectively as possible with the board and anyone else who's interested in a way to try to help move it forward. So that's all. That's for what it's worth. That's my take on it. And I don't mean to speak for Brett. And I don't know that that's possible. Scott may be able to chime in, but
Scott, what do you
that would
think
be my
about
suggested language.
Scott, what do you think about that kind of give and take?
Oh, listen, it's ultimately it's up to, well, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about it. I think I was looking at numbers, and I think if you were able to knock it down by 9 feet, you would get at least that, you'd have at least the full height of the tower as a setback. So I think it's, and like Mike said, that extra height was added because there was a concern when we were dealing with the Mount Marion Fire Department and relocating to make sure that
Right.
there was room for the emergency services. And like you know, we explained that we did have meetings with the folks at the town. The police were very interested in using that. Again, I don't know if how quickly that would happen or not, but I will gladly talk to Brett about it. Like I said, unfortunately, he had some type of an emergency that he had to drop off. But yes, listen, if Mike and Brett are okay with doing that, they're the boss in terms of that part of it.
Madam Chair, may I just make one last question, then I'll be quiet?
Yeah, sure you will.
I'll try. I will. I want to go back to page 13 of the original application, where Mike very adequately describes a search area. And he points out that topography must be considered to minimize the obstacles between the proposed site and the target coverage area. For example, a site at the bottom of a ridge will not be able to cover the other side of a certain height. No kidding. I 100% agree with that. In general, the farther from a site the user population is, the weaker the RF conditions are, and the worse their experience is likely to be. These distant users will also have an increased impact on the serving site's capacity. I disagree with that. And I also disagree that the further from a site, 1,000 feet is a yawn. The existing network conditions also decide of a new site. Sites are placed too close together. And my final comment is that when I look at the search ring, 1,100 feet? What was the search ring? A quarter of a mile? An eighth on each side? That was the search ring? And are there any ridges? So if Verizon doesn't want to do drive tests, and I can appreciate that, and I imagine their co-applicant even less would want to do that, let's just see radials of average terrain between the two sites. And then let a somewhat experienced RF engineer look at that and say, this is a yawn. Because my opinion now is 120 feet. And by the way, this is really embarrassing with the Mount Marion Fire Department. They use VHF and low band. Neither of those frequencies really care. They'd be happy with 60 feet as they are now, or 90 feet. I mean, that is hardly an explanation for this. The question is, what does Verizon need? Well, and I said it needs 120, or what was it, 119.4 center of radiation. Absolutely. That's what it needed, and it was modest. Usually someone will overgrab, but it was Verizon's application, and they were very good about it. So I just look about this, and I just read how you have defined a search area and what the topography is. And I've looked at the topographic maps, and I don't see any ridges between here and there. Maybe there are that don't show up, and that would be quite helpful to me. And that might even eliminate any further consider of this, and then give them everything they want. Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Ron, can I just say that we weren't suggesting that the fire department would go to this tower. In fact, when that came up, I think during the prior application, the fire department said they wouldn't go put their antennas on that tower. It's not worth it to run the lines and everything. I don't know how that impacts the police. You would clearly know better than I, because I don't know where their sites are, so I don't know how important the height is to them. But obviously they use different frequencies than we're talking about. I just wanted to clarify that, that's all.
You bet, and they do. The frequencies that they use are almost insensitive to the difference between 90 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet, because they're VHF, which propagate very well. If Verizon had frequencies like that, they would have a lot fewer sites, or low band, which they might use also up there. They would propagate like crazy too. So you're right. And that was nice of the applicant to give them the ability to go on there. But I'm only looking at one thing. What does Verizon need to do this? And I'm still a little troubled by that after I even read this again. I don't see any ridges between here and there, and I don't think 1,100 feet is a really big deal as far as attenuation. And we can do that very easily. If you'd like to do the I can calculate that to see what the additional free space loss for 1,100 feet would be. And if it's within 1 or 2 dB, then it doesn't matter. Because remember, you say you need -80, and I say -82 works, and an RF engineer will say, yeah, okay, fine, if that's what they want. I mean,
so I have to jump in, Ron, because
yeah, okay, fine.
you've had a fair bit of airtime on this ridgeline thing, and I provided crystal clear evidence.
Yeah, okay.
I provided crystal clear, and I can't help but use that term, crystal clear evidence of a ridgeline, in fact, does exist within the footprint of the site. And that ridgeline is very specifically impacting the Mount Marion housing development area. And so the proposed location, which we've talked about, is roughly around 170 feet of ground elevation. And the ridgeline is around 205 feet of elevation, plus it has 80-foot tall trees on it. So we're talking about a combined height of 285 feet, okay? So if you figure the ground elevation that we have, plus our tower height, our antenna center line, relative to that ridge line that exists on the northeastern portion of the Mount Marion housing development, and how that housing development actually then tapers away, goes back down in elevation, that is, in fact, the challenge that's very specifically related to this particular application. That is, in fact, why the Mount Marion Fire Department was originally preferred, because that close distance and the relative proximity where we were further south allowed us to overcome the terrain that exists in that community. By moving the site roughly 1,100 feet to the north-northeast, has not only increased that distance, but also complicates that propagation characteristics of that community. And it again is crystal clear in its evidence in the RF justification. I would please ask anybody that's interested to review that information.
Do any of the other board members have any comments or questions that they would like to ask? None? All right, I want to ask the board a question. Putting aside what Mike and Scott just said, that maybe there were ways, speaking with Ron, that they might be able to reconfigure the tower height and the antenna directions to bring it down a little bit, the height. Do we think we have enough information in this current application, the revised application, to declare that the application is complete enough to hold a public hearing? The application is complete. Knowing that there's always going to be some changes along the way and so forth, but enough of the application in terms of where it is, what the setbacks currently are, etc., to declare this application complete. What say you, board?
I don't know.
I think the longer we hold off the public, who's been waiting for God only knows how long now, we've postponed them so many times, I think, and we might even learn something from the public, but we can't do that unless you feel that the application that we've gotten is complete enough to do that. So I need you to let me know. Anybody want to make a motion to declare the application complete?
And Patty, this is Kim. Sorry, I had to find another location to plug in my laptop, so
okay.
That's why my video's off. But just so the board knows too, again, just as Patty said, the purpose of declaring the application is complete is that you have enough information in moving forward. If the board does have more questions, they are free to continue to ask for if there's something else that comes along during the public hearing review, they can still ask the applicant information, just in case the board wasn't aware of that.
This is not the final thing, obviously, because we still have questions that are outstanding, and Scott was going to get us additional information, and we haven't had a chance to do a site visit. But well, let me put it this way: you can vote no or yes. I'm going to make a motion to declare the application complete, given what Kim just said to us, that it doesn't mean that we can't continue to ask questions and get information, but the basic outlines of this site, this revised site, are pretty much what they are right now. I have a second.
I'll second it, Patty.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Patty. I will go along with that as long as it's noted that the conditions that we spoke about through this whole conversation were met and presented to us before next month's meeting.
Sure. I mean, the kind of tweaks that you were talking about, Mike, and Scott were talking about, it would be good to see.
Yeah, we just got on talking about tower height. We just got done talking about other.
Right.
Okay, over the last hour.
But Henry, are you saying that Verizon is required to provide additional information before we will set the public hearing?
I'm saying that they have to supply that information to us prior to the public hearing.
Well, let me ask Scott and Ron and Mike if that would be possible, that you could come up with some scenarios on how to lower that tower height that you were talking about. Would that be possible to do that before next month, Mike? And Ron?
For me, I'm just the one that causes the disruption. Unfortunately, I'll have to let Scott answer that. So, you know, and obviously it's with everybody's best interest in mind to try to cross that bridge. So, you know, I apologize, but Scott will have to, you know, address whether that's possible to provide that.
Yeah, that's not a problem, Mike. Yeah, I'm going to have a conversation with Tarpon and the Verizon folks, you know, either tomorrow.
I understand you have to talk to Tarpon and they may just say no way.
Yes.
But either way, we'll know. We'll know by next month.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Henry, does that satisfy you?
Yeah, Scott. You don't have the best track record of giving information to us, and I'm trying to be polite. So that being said, I'll take your word at that. And if you're saying that we're going to have the information for next month's meeting, I have no problem.
I've written things down we need. We'll get that to you. Go from there.
Yeah, the goal is to get that tower height down so that the variances are not lower than the tower height.
Understood. With the other things also of making sure access is there, et cetera.
Yes, that's important.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I have the list.
And it probably should also be submitted about is it 2 weeks before? What's the submission date, Patty, that you would require?
The submission date is, I don't have it right on me. It's usually the Wednesday before the last meeting, because we have to get a public hearing notice in. I'll email Scott and you the exact date. I didn't bring that with me, stupidly.
Yeah, it's usually like the second Wednesday before the meeting, or
yeah.
About 2 weeks, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay. I'll email you that, Scott, so you have it. And
thank you.
And Holly, in answer to your question, you can still schedule the public hearing. We're just asking Scott to provide that. So it's kind of like you schedule that you can, depending on if the application is complete, you can schedule the public hearing with the understanding that Scott will provide those details.
Okay.
So thank you, Kim. So the way I'm understanding it is we're saying the application is complete. We're going to schedule a public hearing, but the application might get even better because Verizon is going to work on lowering the tower height if they can.
Right. Or it might not if the Tarpon Tower says no way. I mean, we don't know what he's going to say. Okay. So is there any other discussion on this motion to?
Patty, it's Joe.
Hi, Joe.
I'm a little confused. There's something that Ron mentioned about, I believe, something like radial measurements at 0, 45, 90, 135. Seem like they'd be important data for us to see. I'm wondering if we can include that in our request.
Well, could we just include in that Ron and Mike have conversations about that?
Surely.
Ken, I like remembering the 80s too, so we can have a discussion about 1980s RF propagation, no problem.
It wasn't the year, it was the degrees.
Yeah.
45.
The beautiful thing about RF propagation, it hasn't changed since Marconi or his predecessors did the very first RF. RF doesn't change. It's the same. The technology changes, the modulation, long-term evolution, CDMA, all that nonsense. But you know what? To get from here to there with an RF signal, never, ever changed because the speed of light hasn't changed, nor has free space attenuation changed. So yeah, what would be nice, and that would be fun, Mike, and you can do that because you have these tremendous databases, to just show radials between the two sites. And then I will see that ridge that I can't find on my topographic maps, and that'll be a big help about. And then maybe you'll see, well, maybe we can get by with 130 feet.
So
You
So
Mike,
know,
do
Ron
you
and I
agree,
will talk
do you
about
agree
that.
to look
We'll
at
talk,
that? And-
Ron,
we'll
I'll
talk
take a
about
look at it, and Ron and I will follow up in the next 2 weeks. And if it's possible to provide something that satisfies Ron, we will certainly do that.
It'll be a lot easier than drive tests, I got to tell you, right, Mike?
Well, there's give and take
Are
everywhere
there
we go,
any,
isn't
is
there?
there any other
Yeah.
discussion from the board? From the board? Hearing none, with the provisions that have been added, that we're going to get some information from Scott and also from Mike.
And
And
Ron.
with the provision that we can ask additional questions as we go on, that we are deeming this application to be complete enough that we can call for public hearing. Is that agreeable to everybody? Please, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Henry,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so then the next thing I'd like to do is talk about setting the public hearing for October 4th. Yes, public who's on the phone right now, you might actually make it. We might actually have a public hearing. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to set a public hearing for October 4th.
Can I have a second?
I'll second
I'll second
Joe.
it.
Joe seconds. Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please, for the record. Henry,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so unless anybody else has anything else to add on the Tarpon Towers 2 Verizon for tonight, we are finished. The board has to stay because we have minutes to approve. But does anybody else have anything they want to say before we close out the night?
Thank you for entertaining me.
Yes,
I
Scott,
appreciate it.
Yes.
Kevin's going to send you the 500-foot thing again, the residences, and we will update the letter. And we've already put the application online so that people can read it. And so we'll try this again. 3 times is the lucky straw, I think. All
I
right.
look forward to it. Thank you
Yeah,
for your patience.
Me too. Okay, and to the
Have a good
public
evening.
who has been part of this for so long, we're very glad that you've stuck with us, and next week it'll be your opportunity to start saying what's on your mind and offering us your thoughts. So to everybody that's not on the board, I thank you very much for your participation, and see you next month. Scott, we'll talk.
You got it. Thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Hi, Ron.
Bye, Ron. Bye, everybody. Okay, board members. Did everybody have a chance to look at the board minutes that Holly added some clarifying edits, which were really excellent? Just a sentence in both of them. And would anybody like to make a motion with those edits?
I'd like to thank Holly for her comments, for her addition.
Yes. Yes. So that would be for the July and the August minutes.
Yes.
Okay, Jody, want to make the motion?
I'll make the motion, Patty.
Okay, and can I have a second?
Second. I'll second.
And let's do a roll call vote just to make sure. Henry, yes? Oh, Henry, yes?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I think both of those were Holly's. Okay, Holly,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. And so those pass. Is there any other business we need to discuss? Now, Randy, you're going to be part of this one that we did tonight, the application pertaining to the interpretation. So we'll be holding a public hearing next time on that, and then you'll be part of that vote. Okay, so we're all good, and
So I hope it was okay. I asked some questions tonight on
about
the Canary application, and I don't vote on that one, but I just thought my questions might help other board members to understand and the public. So
no, that's fine. That's
Okay.
absolutely fine. That's actually
Helpful.
so, and it was helpful. Thank you. And actually, I was very pleased with the way that went. It was very congenial. And it,
Yeah, I'm sorry I interjected with you, Henry. I didn't, but I got a map right here, and it does look like it's closer, but if
Yeah,
you see
Henry,
it, but if
we
you
all
look at
saw
the
the
map,
map.
it's clearly further away.
You would lose the golf game.
Now, Randy, I went on Google Map and
It's
you're
deceiving.
saying Kings Highway definitely swings that way.
You built a crooked road.
But if you
Thanks, everybody. This was a really good meeting, and I think we
but
got a lot
if you
accomplished
go down
tonight.
Industrial Drive,
Oh, yeah, surely.
And
that's
before
what
he
we're
stops
talking about.
adjourn,
We're talking
we're
about
gonna
the
have to do
site.
a motion to adjourn because I always forget that part. And I want to have
right.
him record it that I actually do it. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Anybody? Tim
Joe will
does it.
make.
Can I have a second?
Yes, Joe.
Joe, and we'll just do a
Yes.
voice vote. Yes.
yes.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Do it again next month.